Good morning and welcome to STEM Ambassadors Live. And I'm joined today by Stephen Ashworth from the University of East Anglia. And Stephen is going to speak to you about where STEM could take you. So I'm going to hand over now. Thanks ever so much.
Well, thank you very much. And hello, everybody. As you've heard, my name is Professor Stephen Ashworth. You spell Stephen with a PH because I'm trained in chemistry. And I am at the University of East Anglia. I happen to be the senior advisor in chemistry, physics, and natural sciences. And so today we're going to take a look at where and what you can end up doing with a STEM training. So let's move my slides along. Let's have a look at my career. Well, I went to school in Norwich and managed to get into Oxford to do my university. Now, that sounds all well and good, but remember, I was the first in my family to go to university. So that was quite an achievement, and don't let it put any of you off from trying the same. I stayed there to do a PhD, so I became Dr. Ashworth. And after the PhD, once you become a doctor, there's the opportunity, if you're going in the academic stream, to do postdoc. So it's called a postdoc position. You become a research associate, and I worked in Boulder, Colorado for a year. So that got me out of the UK. And the next 2.5 years I spent doing a similar thing in Berlin, in Germany. I met my wife there. Well, she wasn't my wife at the time, of course, and learned German. So there were some additional benefits to that post. I followed a straightforward academic career. So after a couple of postdocs, I applied for an independent fellowship. And I got that. I spent 4 years at Bristol and 1 year at UEA doing that 5-year fellowship. And now I'm in a permanent position. So you can see that is a typical academic workflow, if you like. But I'm sure not everyone's interested in that. We're looking at where else it could take you. So where could STEM take you? I know this answer sounds a little trite, but literally anywhere. What does anywhere mean? Well, geographically, anywhere means all over the world and beyond. I spent some time traveling, doing some presentations with a scientist from the US, and that scientist had been on 4 shuttle missions. So yes, it can take you off the planet. What does anywhere mean? Any type of job you like. Let's just look into that a bit more. If you do STEM training, you will end up with skills such as the following. You have to be able to communicate your ideas. So there's the written word, you'll write reports, presentations like this, that will be part of your degree, your training. And certainly in the science world, a very efficient way of communicating ideas is posters. Well, you might call them infographics in a way. So you'll be trained in communicating ideas. You will have some level of numeracy. Okay, there will be training that has more of this, and some training has less, but you'll end up handling data. Sometimes these will be large data sets, sometimes they will be smaller, but you will handle the data, you will take data, you will research and find data, and then you'll have to plot the data, present it as pictures, do some analysis on it. But so you will be numerate. Along the way, you're going to have to listen to arguments given to people why such and such has been concluded, and you're going to have to construct your own arguments. So you'll have logical thinking, and that will be developed throughout your STEM training. And with these 3 sets of skills, any employer will want you for a graduate job. Now, what I haven't mentioned there are the laboratory skills that you will get in addition to all of these. So if you study chemistry, you'll learn basic chemical skills in the laboratory. If you study physics, you'll do experiments in the laboratory. If you study biology, you'll be able to maybe specialize in microbiology and get those skills. And there'll be essential laboratory skills that you get. So even if you don't go into a career which uses those skills directly, maybe you're not working in a biotechnology industry, maybe you're not going into somewhere where you need to use your physics experimental skills, you'll know about these things and you'll be able to communicate with scientists and appreciate what they're saying. If you're working in a firm that employs scientists and you have to talk to them for whatever reason, maybe you're designing a piece of software for them, you can discuss their problems in an informed way. So bearing that in mind, you could have a job that affects people. And I've got some examples here. I know this might be showing my age, but here's one example. Big guy on the right is Dolph Lundgren. He has a degree in chemical engineering. Now, some of you may recognize this. It's one of the Rocky films, either Rocky 2 or Rocky 3. Phoebe from Friends. Now, if you're a Friends fanatic, you'll know that Phoebe was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. She has a degree in biology. Dara O'Brien is probably better known for having a degree in some mathematical, theoretical physics type subject. And of course, there's a famous Brian May from Queen, who gave up her PhD in astrophysics to go off with a boy band and probably didn't regret it. He's recently finished his PhD in astrophysics. So it doesn't preclude you doing something completely different. You might end up with a job that affects a whole countries. Now, these are two leaders that you may have come across. Angela Merkel was the Chancellor of Germany, and she has a theoretical physics degree. Margaret Thatcher has a degree in chemistry. So again, you don't need to be chained to a lab bench or be out in the field taking samples to have a really effective job with STEM training. And I'm sure their STEM training, their logical thought, taking decisions based on evidence, really helped them in their careers. Alternatively, you might have a job, instead of affecting one person or a country, it might affect the whole world. So here I have a picture of a rather poor-looking crop. We have a certain number of people in the world. That number of people needs a certain number of calories every day. So we need to produce food. And if we see scenes like this of failed harvests, we're not going to be able to do that. We have a lot of fixed, expensive infrastructure, bridges, roads, nuclear power plants, houses, schools, universities. And we're seeing more extreme weather events. This is a picture of a solar power plant. We hear more and more about oil, how simply burning it is not good for the atmosphere. We don't want to stop extracting it because it is an essential feedstock for making things like pharmaceuticals, plastics, vaccines. But we need to stop simply burning it in our cars just to get around. And so you might, we might see more power plants like this. And in fact, driving around the country, traveling around, there are fields that are being put over to solar voltaics. And of course, there is disease. We don't know the next one that's around the corner. I used to have a cancer cell on this slide, but obviously I updated it to show the coronavirus. Now, if you're working in science, you have the opportunity to work on one of these challenges, and it is the next generation of scientists that are going to be needed to work on these challenges. Now, you might only do something incremental. You might discover something that will increase the efficiency of a solar cell by 0.5%, but that will make a huge difference over the whole world. You might discover something that will allow us to manage floodwater much more easily. That would make a huge difference to the amount of damage that is done in, for example, flooding. You might find some gene in a test plant that then can be put into wheat or maize to make them more resilient to drought or floods or other potential climate impacts. You may find a way to make vaccines more efficiently, or you may make an incremental step that allows someone else to make vaccines more efficiently. So these are the sorts of things, if you went into science, hard science, that you might end up influencing in the rest of your careers. Now, what I've got now is some information from students that I know, and I've taken this from LinkedIn. This is my LinkedIn network of students, and LinkedIn is like a Facebook, professional Facebook. So you put up your career, your experience, and people can look at it. There's a public facing profile page, and there's a profile page that's open to your network. But by all means, go on there. You can make your own account and follow companies. There are sometimes job offers that are put up. So it's interesting, and we encourage our students to make a LinkedIn account. Now, be aware that the students involved here are ones that I've had to do with. So they've studied chemistry, physics, or natural sciences. Natural sciences is a subject that's offered more widely now, that where you can study more than one science to a very high level. Health warning, the job titles may not be up to date. It's one of these things that doesn't update automatically. You have to go in and change the job title, but the job titles will reflect a job that they have had at some point. There are 20 years of students here, so there will be a lot of them that have already reached senior positions. And the next slide is a word cloud. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it a phrase cloud. So it's broken up job titles such as senior manager. But these are the sorts of words that come up in the job titles of the students that I have. So we see sustainability, consultant, success even, because there are some that are customer success managers. Obviously teacher, both chemistry, physics, and science. Audit, engineer, forensic, they're all there. So what, if I take a selection of these, what does it look like? We have students that have gone on to teaching. Certainly physics and chemistry students get big bursaries to go on to do teaching. Obviously further study, so this is students that have gone on to do PhDs and MScs. There is a whole industry of science communication. I have another talk later in this series on science communication. Some have gone into forensic science, a lot of consultants, a lot of analysts. Some are research scientists, so they're not in a university, an academic environment, but you can be a research scientist somewhere else in another sort of company. Software engineers and underwriters, which are working in insurance firms. And here are a selection of the firms they're working for. So we see a couple of police forces, there's a network rail. Copperfield is an interesting one. That's a charity. So that's a breast cancer charity. There's the revenue and customs. The research councils are where money, government money, is funneled into university research. So again, the science training is not being used directly, but being able to talk to scientists is very important there. Some are doing forensic science. Thing to remember with forensic science is it's more important to get a good degree in science, because you can learn the forensic science on the job, the forensic bit of it. Ralph Laurent, one of my former students, is working there. See NPL, the National Physical Laboratory, where the standards for this country are kept, the NHS, Biosciences, Health Service, Castrol, an oil firm, Aviva, insurance company, the IPO, which is the Intellectual Property Office in the UK, and look at the end there, future of flight and space flight. Now be aware, I've been talking about students that have come through university. They've done degrees. There are other ways to get into a STEM career or to get STEM training, and they can be going through the the apprentice route, and just going straight from school into a technical job. They are all valid ways of having a career in STEM. My advice for you, whatever career you go into, be it STEM or you decide to do something else, always be ready to take opportunities. Take those opportunities, you learn things about yourself, you learn new skills, and you can practice the skills you have. I, for example, had the opportunity just before I started A-levels to go and sail on a tall ship for 2 weeks. It was fantastic. I learned a whole range of new skills, learned a lot about myself. I learned that I can get over being seasick, if nothing else. And then when you have done something like this, taken an opportunity, learned something, note down what, where, and when you learned, and reflect on what you gained. Even if you've been a shelf stacker in a supermarket as a job, you have key skills that you have learned. You have worked in a team, probably. You've had to be reliable. It's been shift work. All these things add up to skills that are saleable. They look good on a CV. They look good even when you're applying to university. If you can show that you can reflect, to think about what you've gained and talk about it. Well, thank you very much for listening. I would be happy to take any questions if anyone would like to ask.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That was brilliant. So question-wise, so when you were at school, what did you want to be when you grew up? Did you follow the career path that you thought you would, or did it take some twists and turns along the way?
That's a really interesting question. When I was first at my high school, I wanted to be a chef. So you can sort of say, well, chemistry is cooking in a way, or cooking is chemistry. But no, I desperately wanted to be a chef. But then I thought to myself, no, unsociable hours. I hadn't seen anything like Gordon Ramsay, so I didn't know quite what it entailed, but I decided that was not for me. And then I didn't have a career goal. I just drifted along, took the opportunities that arose, and here I am.
So I think that's actually the same for a lot of us. When I've spoken to a lot of my STEM ambassadors, what they think they want to be at school isn't actually where they end up.
And I think the other important thing to remember is when I was at school, there was no such thing as a social media manager. There was no such thing as a front-end developer for websites. There are jobs now that just didn't exist.
And again, there will be jobs that will be in the future that don't exist now. There are new jobs being created all the time.
Exactly. So that's why it's important to be open to picking up new skills and taking the opportunities that arise, because you just don't know what's going to be around the corner. There are jobs today that will be defunct. They won't be these jobs anymore, and there will be new jobs, new titles with new requirements in the future.
Some really, really good advice in that talk, Stephen. Thank you ever so much. I'm going to stop the recording now.